Well, hey, everybody, we're going to jump right in today. So what's up, Steve?
Hey, nothing much. How are you, Sean?
I'm doing well. So I just want to hear from you. Is there anything that you wanted to share with us in this Behind the Sermon based on your recent sermon on Ephesians chapter 4?
Yeah, so it's kind of based on Ephesians, but not really.
But
So
not
here's
really.
what's going on. So this is called Behind the Sermon, right? So sometimes what happens behind the sermon is like what happened to the sermonizer, what happened to the preacher during the week, and how that affected how he felt about the sermon and sermon prep and all that. So I had to meet with somebody. I love them. They're a friend. They remain a friend and all that. But we differed on just about everything we talked about. We just really differed.
Oh, just one of those, like, just
Yeah,
not
like
syncing
you're
up.
in a different world than me, bro.
Right.
So one of the things we talked about was sermons and preaching. And it was his like firm view that preaching is not where it's at. Preaching doesn't accomplish much. If you really want to accomplish much, if you really want to change people, what you ought to do is get group discussions where all different views are shared and everybody gets to contribute, everybody gets to pile in. And I told him, well, actually, we have community groups where that happens. But
Small
no,
groups.
like instead of the pulpit, instead of preaching on Sundays, that's like old time. You ought to really just like have discussions and involve people in them and so on. So, of course, me being like Mr. Bible guy, I went to the Bible and said, the pastoral epistles. Like, let me back up.
Sure.
So if we're going to do church, how do we know how to do church? Well, we know how to do church because the Bible is going to tell us how to do church, right? Where do we base our ecclesiology, our doctrine of the church? In the Bible. Jesus and his apostles tell us, here's how you do church. So in the pastoral epistles, interesting name, 1st, 2nd Timothy, Titus, they're written to pastors. They instruct pastors in how to do pastoral things. So Paul says things like this: preach the word. Preach, not form discussion groups. No. Preach the word. Be instant, in season and out of season. In season is when they want it. People are saying, oh, preach to us. Out of season is when they're saying, you ought to have discussion groups instead. But Paul says, no, you preach the word. And then he says, reprove, rebuke, exhort with all authority. And then he says, till I come, give attention to reading the text, explaining the text, the doctrine in it, and applying the text. And then he says, continue in doing this. Look to yourself and to the teaching, for in doing this you will save yourself and your hearers. So in other words, the pastoral epistles tell us, and lots of other places in the New Testament tell us, what I'm supposed to be doing is preaching. So it's just so discouraging when a good friend, a guy I love, still love him, when he comes along while I'm in the middle of sermon prep, while I'm getting ready for a Sunday, and he really lays this thing on me where basically, in my words, what you're doing isn't where it's happening. You ought to change your whole game. You ought to stop doing that preaching thing. So that's something that was behind the sermon this week.
Yeah, I'm glad
What
we
do you
got to
think of that?
talk about it. That was really, I thought that was great. I'd love to do
I'm
more
like
videos
venting. I'm getting my thing out
like
here.
that. And yeah, it's like a video blog. Next time, Steve.
Thanks.
Of course.